The clock on my nightstand glowed 3:47 a.m. when I heard Beatrice rustling around the bedroom like a burglar in her own home. My wife of 12 years was packing again, another scouting trip for her luxury travel agency. Funny how these trips always seem to coincide with my business partner, Desmond's, schedule. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Quincy Garrett, 38 years old, and I've spent the last decade building a real estate development company from nothing. Started with my bare hands and a pickup truck, now I own half the lakefront properties around Boston. But lying there in the dark, watching my wife stuff designer clothes into her Louis Vuitton suitcase, I felt like the biggest fool in Massachusetts. "Another client emergency?" I asked, not bothering to hide the sarcasm in my voice. Beatrice jumped like I'd fired a gun. "Jesus, Quincy, you scared me." She clutched her silk robe tighter. "Yes, it's the Henderson account. They need someone in the Hamptons by tomorrow." The Henderson account. Right. The same fictional clients she'd been servicing for 3 months now. I'd built my business on reading people, spotting the lies they tell themselves and others. Beatrice had always been a terrible liar, but lately she'd gotten creative. "Funny thing," I said, sitting up in bed. "I ran into Mrs. Henderson at the grocery store yesterday. Sweet old lady. She mentioned how much she loves staying local these days, never travels anymore since her hip surgery." Beatrice's face went white in the dim light from her phone screen. "Different Hendersons," she stammered. "Corporate clients. You wouldn't know them." I watched her fumble with her phone, the screen locked tighter than Fort Knox. 6 months ago, she used to leave it lying around, ask me to answer texts while she was cooking. Now she guarded it like state secrets. "When will you be back?" "Thursday, maybe Friday." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Depends on how the meetings go." Thursday. I pulled up my mental calendar. Desmond had mentioned a supplier conference in New York, leaving Wednesday, returning Friday. What were the odds? Beatrice finished packing and headed for the door. "Try not to wait up. You know how these trips drain me." After she left, I sat in my workshop behind the house, surrounded by the tools that built my empire. Circular saws, nail guns, blueprints rolled up like scrolls of conquest. This was where I did my real thinking, where the smell of sawdust and motor oil cleared my head. My phone buzzed. Text from Nora Kelly, Desmond's wife. "We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow, 8 a.m., Lakeside Diner. Trust me on this." I stared at the message for a long time. Nora and I had always gotten along well. She was sharp, funny, didn't take Desmond's bullshit. If she wanted to meet, it wasn't for small talk. The next morning, I found Nora in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept. Her usually perfect blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes had the hollow look of someone who'd been crying. "Thanks for coming," she said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "I think we have a problem. Actually, I think we have the same problem." I opened the folder. GPS logs, printed in neat columns. Dates, times, locations. My stomach dropped as I recognized the pattern. Every time Beatrice had gone on a business trip, Desmond's car had been at the same locations. Beach houses, luxury hotels, romantic restaurants 2 hours from home. "How long have you known?" I asked. 3 weeks. I hired a private investigator after I found a receipt for lingerie in Desmond's jacket. Victoria's Secret, size 6. I'm a size 10, Quincy. Have been since college. She laughed bitterly. The PI followed them to a beach house in Mystic. Got photos of them going in together, coming out the next morning wearing each other's clothes. I studied the logs, my hands surprisingly steady. This shows they've been at it for months. Since January, near as I can figure. Remember that weekend Beatrice went to that spa retreat? Same weekend Desmond claimed he had food poisoning and couldn't make it to your birthday dinner. The pieces clicked together like a perfectly measured joint. All those canceled plans, the mysterious phone calls, Beatrice's sudden interest in personal growth and finding herself. She'd been finding herself, all right, in my best friend's bed. "What do you want to do about it?" I asked. Nora's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I want to destroy them. Both of them. Completely." Over the next hour, Nora laid out everything she'd discovered. The private investigator had been thorough. Photos, credit card statements, hotel receipts. Desmond had been using our company credit card to fund his affair, charging romantic dinners and weekend getaways as business expenses. "The snake has been stealing from you to wine and dine your wife," Nora said, sliding another set of papers across the table. "Look at this. Champagne dinner at the Four Seasons, charged as a client meeting. Couples massage at a spa resort, listed as team-building exercise." I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. This wasn't just adultery anymore. This was theft, fraud, a violation of every trust I'd built my life on. "They think we're idiots," I said. "Complete fools. I heard Beatrice on the phone last week, talking to someone about how easy it was to manage us, how we were too busy with work to notice what was happening right under our noses." That stung more than I expected. I'd been proud of providing for Beatrice, giving her the luxury lifestyle she craved. Designer clothes, expensive cars, the kind of house she used to dream about when we were dating. Turned out I'd been funding my own humiliation. "So, what's the plan?" I asked. Nora leaned forward, her eyes bright with malicious intent. "They're planning another romantic getaway this weekend. Desmond told me he has an emergency client meeting in Hartford. Beatrice probably fed you some similar story." She had. Something about a destination wedding consultation that required her immediate attention. "Here's what we're going to do," Nora continued. "We're going to catch them in the act. But not just catch them. We're going to make sure the whole world knows what they've been up to." She outlined her plan with the precision of a military operation. We'd track them to their love nest, coordinate our arrival for maximum impact, and document everything for the divorce proceedings. But Nora wanted more than just evidence. She wanted revenge. "I've been married to Desmond for 15 years, she said. "I put him through business school, supported him when he was starting out, played the perfect corporate wife at every company function. And this is how he repays me? By screwing around with my friend's wife using stolen money?" I understood her anger. Desmond and I had built our company together, starting with small residential projects and working our way up to major commercial developments. I'd trusted him with everything: my business, my reputation, my family's financial security. The betrayal cut deeper than just the affair. "There's something else," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've been reviewing our partnership agreement. Remember that bad actor clause we put in 5 years ago?" Nora raised an eyebrow. "The one that lets either partner buy out the other at a discount if they engage in behavior that damages the company." "Exactly. Using company funds for personal expenses, especially to conduct an extramarital affair, definitely qualifies as damaging behavior. I can force him out and buy his shares at 30 cents on the dollar." "How much would that cost him?" I did quick math in my head. "About $2 million. His half of the company is worth $3 million. The buyout clause means I can acquire it for $1 million. Nora's smile was predatory. "Perfect. While you're destroying him financially, I'll be taking him for everything else in the divorce. The house, the cars, his retirement accounts. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, but adultery still matters, especially when there's financial misconduct involved." We shook hands across the table like generals forming an alliance. Two betrayed spouses, united in pursuit of justice. Or revenge. Sometimes the line between them gets pretty thin. The rest of the week passed in a blur of preparation. I quietly gathered evidence of Desmond's misuse of company funds, documented every fraudulent expense, every lie he'd told to cover his tracks. Nora coordinated with her private investigator, making sure we'd have professional documentation of the affair. Thursday evening, Beatrice called from her business trip. "How's the Henderson account going?" I asked, testing her commitment to the lie. "Oh, you know how it is. Demanding clients, lots of details to work out. I might need to stay an extra day." "That's fine, honey. Take all the time you need." I could hear the relief in her voice. She probably thought she was so clever, managing her double life with such skill. Tomorrow morning, she'd learn otherwise. Friday morning, 5:30 a.m. Nora and I sat in my pickup truck outside the Seaside Inn, a boutique hotel in Mystic, Connecticut. The GPS tracker Nora had placed on Desmond's BMW showed he'd been here since Wednesday evening. Beatrice's Range Rover was parked 2 spots away, confirming what we already knew. "Room 237, Nora said, checking her phone. The private investigator confirmed they checked in under fake names, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. How original." I felt surprisingly calm. The rage I'd expected was replaced by cold determination. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was business. "You ready for this?" I asked. "I've been ready for weeks." Nora pulled out her key card. The PI had connections at the hotel, had gotten us access. "Let's go ruin their morning." We took the elevator to the 2nd floor, moving quietly down the hallway. The hotel was still mostly asleep, perfect for what we had planned. At room 237, Nora positioned herself in front of the door while I set up my phone to record. "On 3, she whispered. 1, 2. The keycard beeped, and Nora burst through the door like an avenging angel. "You're dating my husband!" she screamed at the top of her lungs. The scene inside was exactly what we'd expected and somehow worse than I'd imagined. Beatrice and Desmond were tangled together in the king-size bed, both naked, both frozen in shock. Beatrice's face went white as snow, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Desmond scrambled for the sheets, his face red with embarrassment and panic. "Nora, what are you? How did I find you?" Nora's voice could have cut steel. "GPS tracker, you moron. I've known about this for weeks." I stepped into the room behind her, phone recording everything. "Morning, sunshine," I said to Beatrice. "You really thought we'd never find out?" Beatrice went stiff with fear, finally understanding the scope of her situation. She clutched the bedsheet to her chest, her designer jewelry scattered on the nightstand next to a bottle of champagne, charged to my company card, no doubt. "Quincy, I can explain," she started. "No need," I interrupted, pulling a manila envelope from my jacket. "I think these will explain everything." I tossed the divorce papers onto the bed, followed by a second set of documents. "Those are for you, Desmond. Dissolution of partnership, effective immediately." Desmond's face went from red to pale. "You can't just... We have contracts." "Actually, I can. Section 12, subsection C of our partnership agreement, the bad actor clause, using company funds for personal expenses constitutes a breach of fiduciary duty. I'm exercising my right to buy out your shares at the penalty rate." "What penalty rate?" Desmond was scrambling into his underwear, trying to maintain some dignity. 30 cents on the dollar. Your $3 million stake just became a $1 million payout. Congratulations. You just lost $2 million for a few months of cheap thrills. Beatrice finally found her voice. "This is insane. You can't just destroy our lives because you've been screwing my business partner with my money?" I laughed, and the sound surprised even me. It was genuinely amused, like I was watching a particularly entertaining movie. "Honey, I'm not destroying your life. You did that all by yourself. I'm just presenting the bill." Nora pulled out her own phone, taking pictures of the scene. "These will look great in divorce court. Adultery, fraud, theft. The judge is going to love this." The beautiful thing about catching cheaters in the act is watching their entire worldview collapse in real time. Beatrice had built her life around the assumption that she was smarter than everyone else, that she could manipulate situations to her advantage. Sitting there naked and exposed, holding divorce papers while her lover cowered in his boxers. She finally understood how wrong she'd been. "The GPS logs show you've been doing this for months," I continued, enjoying the moment more than I probably should have. "Every business trip, every client emergency, every time you claimed I was being too controlling or suspicious. You were just projecting your own guilt." Desmond tried to salvage something from the wreckage. "Look, Quincy, we can work this out. We're partners, we're friends." "Were," I corrected. Past tense. Friends don't steal from each other, partners don't commit fraud, and neither of them screw the other guy's wife in hotel rooms paid for with company money. I turned back to Beatrice. "By the way, your credit cards are frozen as of this morning. Joint accounts too. Hope you brought cash for the trip home." The look of panic that crossed her face was priceless. Beatrice had never worked a day in her adult life that wasn't funded by my success. Her luxury travel agency was more hobby than business, subsidized by my real estate profits. Without access to our joint accounts, she was essentially broke. "You can't do that," she whispered. "Actually, I can. Suspected financial fraud gives me the right to freeze joint assets pending investigation. My lawyer filed the paperwork yesterday." Nora was recording everything on her phone, documenting their reactions for posterity. "This is better than reality TV," she said. "Two cheaters caught red-handed, facing the consequences of their actions. Priceless." Monday morning, I walked into the offices of Garrett and Kelly Development with a spring in my step and a box of donuts for the staff. The weekend had given me time to prepare for what came next, and I was looking forward to it. Desmond was already there, trying to act like nothing had happened. He'd called me 6 times over the weekend, left voicemails ranging from apologetic to threatening. I'd ignored them all. Today was about business, and business was about to be very good for me. "Morning, partner," I said, setting the donuts on the reception desk. "Conference room in 5 minutes. Bring your lawyer." "Quincy, we need to talk about Friday." "We'll talk in the conference room, with witnesses." I'd invited our accountant, our company attorney, and the heads of our 3 biggest departments. When everyone was seated, I distributed copies of the partnership dissolution documents. "As of this morning, I'm exercising the bad actor clause in our partnership agreement," I announced. "Desmond Kelly is being bought out of his shares in this company due to financial misconduct." Our attorney, Janet Morrison, had reviewed everything over the weekend. "The evidence is quite clear," she said. "Mr. Kelly used company credit cards for personal expenses totaling over $40,000. Hotel rooms, restaurants, gifts, spa treatments, all charged as business expenses, but clearly personal in nature." Desmond's lawyer, a nervous young man named Peterson, shuffled through his papers. "My client disputes these charges. He claims they were legitimate business expenses." I pulled out a folder thick with evidence. "Business expenses? Let's see. Couples massage at the Serenity Spa, charged as team building. Romantic dinner for 2 at Le Bernardin, listed as client meeting. Weekend at the Ritz-Carlton, described as market research." I looked directly at Desmond. "Which clients were you massaging, Des? Which market were you researching in that hotel room?" The department heads were trying not to laugh. Everyone knew about the affair by now. Small companies are worse than small towns for gossip. Desmond's face was getting redder by the minute. "Furthermore," I continued, "photographic evidence shows Mr. Kelly was accompanied on these business trips by my wife, who has no connection to this company and no reason to be present at legitimate business functions." Peterson cleared his throat. "Even if these expenses were inappropriate, the penalty seems excessive. $2 million for $40,000 in questionable charges?" "The penalty isn't for the money," Janet explained. "It's for the breach of fiduciary duty. Mr. Kelly violated his obligation to act in the company's best interests. The partnership agreement is very clear about the consequences." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the construction site where our latest project was taking shape. "You know what the real tragedy is here? I trusted you, Desmond. We built this company together. From nothing. I would have given you anything you needed, helped you through any problem. But instead of coming to me, you decided to steal from me and sleep with my wife. It wasn't like that, Desmond started. It was exactly like that. I turned back to face him. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. The buyout was finalized within an hour. Desmond's lawyer tried to negotiate, but the partnership agreement was ironclad. I'd insisted on the bad actor clause years ago, after seeing too many businesses destroyed by partner misconduct. Never thought I'd be the one using it. Your final check will be ready by Friday, I told Desmond as he gathered his personal items. Security will escort you out. Quincy, please, we can work through this. I'll pay back the money, end things with Beatrice. Too late for that. I watched as security packed up his office, removing 15 years of shared history. You made your bed, Des, literally. After he left, I called a company meeting. The entire staff gathered in the conference room, everyone buzzing with curiosity about the morning's drama. I want to address the elephant in the room, I said. Yes, Desmond Kelly is no longer with the company. Yes, it's related to personal issues that became business issues. But I want you all to know that this company is stronger than any one person, including me. I looked around the room at the faces of people who'd helped build my dream. We have projects worth $50 million in development. We have the best reputation in the region. And we have each other. Desmond's departure doesn't change any of that. Sarah Chen, our head of project management, raised her hand. What happens to his projects? They become our projects. I'll be taking over his client relationships personally, at least until we hire additional staff. Which reminds me, we're going to be expanding. Desmond's buyout gives us capital to invest in new equipment, new hires, maybe even a second office location. The mood in the room shifted from uncertainty to excitement. Losing a partner was traumatic, but gaining resources for expansion was opportunity. Any other questions? I asked. Tom Bradley, our senior foreman, grinned. Just one. Are you buying lunch to celebrate? Absolutely. Best barbecue in town, my treat. As the staff filed out, chattering about lunch plans and expansion possibilities, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine happiness. The betrayal still stung, but I was beginning to see the silver lining. Sometimes you have to tear down the old structure before you can build something better. The Lakeside Country Club's annual charity gala was the social event of the season, where Boston's suburban elite gathered to see and be seen while writing tax-deductible checks. Beatrice had been planning to attend for months before her world imploded. I decided to go anyway, partly for business networking and partly because I knew she'd be there, desperate to maintain appearances. I arrived fashionably late, wearing my best tuxedo and the confidence of a man who'd just increased his net worth by $2 million. The ballroom was packed with familiar faces, clients, competitors, social climbers, and old money families who'd been summering on the lake since before I was born. Beatrice was holding court near the bar, wearing a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She looked beautiful and desperate, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, clinging to conversations with people who were already looking for exits. I made my rounds, shaking hands and accepting condolences about my difficult situation. The story had spread through our social circle like wildfire, embellished and distorted with each retelling. Some versions had me catching them in bed with a shotgun. Others claimed I'd hired a private army to storm their love nest. The truth was dramatic enough, but people always preferred fiction. Quincy, Margaret Ashford, the club president, intercepted me near the silent auction table. I'm so sorry about everything. How are you holding up? Better than expected, I said honestly. Sometimes life forces you to make changes you should have made years ago. And Desmond? I heard he's struggling. That was an understatement. Word around town was that Desmond had moved into a studio apartment above the pizza place on Main Street. His BMW had been repossessed, and he was driving a 15-year-old Honda with a cracked windshield. Nora's divorce attorney was a shark who'd frozen his assets and demanded forensic accounting of every penny he'd spent during the marriage. Desmond made his choices, I said. Now he's living with them. The evening's entertainment was a charity auction, with local businesses donating services and experiences. I'd contributed a weekend at one of my rental properties, a lakefront cabin that usually booked for $3,000 a weekend. When the auctioning began, I positioned myself where Beatrice could see me clearly. The auctioneer was working through the smaller items when I spotted my opportunity. Desmond had just arrived, looking haggard in a rental tuxedo that didn't fit properly. He made a beeline for Beatrice, and I could see them having an intense, whispered conversation near the emergency exit. I waited until the auction paused for champagne service, then approached the microphone. "Excuse me," I said to the auctioneer. "Could I say a few words about the importance of trust in our community?" Margaret Ashford nodded enthusiastically. She loved impromptu speeches, especially from major donors. I took the microphone and looked out at the crowd of familiar faces. "Thank you all for being here tonight, supporting such a worthy cause. I wanted to talk about trust, because it's the foundation of everything we do. Our businesses, our friendships, our marriages, they're all built on trust." The room was listening politely, expecting a generic speech about community values. Recently, I learned some hard lessons about trust, about what happens when the people closest to you violate that trust in the most personal way possible. I could see Beatrice going pale near the exit. I discovered that my business partner had been stealing from our company to fund an affair with my wife. The polite attention became riveted focus. This was better than reality TV. $40,000 in fraudulent charges. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, spa weekends, all charged to our business while they carried on their affair behind my back. I paused, letting the details sink in. But here's the thing about trust. When it's broken, there are consequences. I could see phones coming out, people recording what was clearly going to be the most talked about moment of the year. My former partner learned that violating trust isn't just morally wrong. It's expensive. A $2 million lesson, to be exact. And my soon-to-be ex-wife learned that the luxury lifestyle she enjoyed was entirely dependent on the man she was betraying. Beatrice was trying to disappear into the crowd, but there was nowhere to hide. Desmond had already fled, probably to his Honda in the parking lot. "So I want to toast the importance of trust," I concluded, raising my champagne glass, "and to the consequences that follow when that trust is broken. To justice, to accountability, and to the truth that always comes out in the end." The room erupted in applause, some of it genuine, most of it the excited energy of people who'd just witnessed spectacular drama. I handed the microphone back to the auctioneer and returned to my table, where several potential clients were waiting to shake my hand. "That was incredible," whispered Janet Morrison, my attorney. "Brutal, but incredible." "Sometimes the truth needs to be spoken publicly," I said, "especially when people are trying to rewrite history." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and business cards. 3 new clients wanted to discuss development projects, and 2 competitors offered to buy some of my smaller properties. Nothing like public vindication to boost your professional reputation. As I was leaving, I passed Beatrice in the parking lot. She was sitting in her Range Rover, crying into her phone, probably calling her sister or her mother, looking for sympathy and a place to stay. The luxury apartment she'd been renting was way beyond her actual budget, another casualty of her reduced circumstances. I knocked on her window. She looked up with red, swollen eyes. "Having a rough night?" I asked. "You humiliated me in front of everyone," she said through the glass. "No, honey, you humiliated yourself. I just provided the details." She rolled down the window. "This isn't over, Quincy. I'll fight the divorce. Contest the prenup. With what lawyer? Your legal fund dried up when I froze the accounts. I leaned down to her level. Face it, B. You bet everything on Desmond being able to support your lifestyle, and you lost. He's broke, you're broke, and I'm just getting started. I walked away, leaving her sitting in the parking lot of a life she could no longer afford. Tomorrow, the story would be all over town. By next week, it would be legend. 2 weeks later, I stood on the dock at Lakeside Marina, watching the sunrise paint the water in shades of gold and orange. It was 6 a.m. on a Saturday, early enough that the lake was still quiet, peaceful in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this place. I wasn't alone. Word had gotten out about my final settlement with Beatrice and Desmond, and half the town had found excuses to be at the marina this morning. Some were there for the weekly charity run that conveniently started at the marina. Others were just curious about the drama that had been entertaining the community for weeks. Nora arrived first, looking better than I'd seen her since this whole mess started. The divorce settlement had been finalized yesterday, and she'd gotten everything. The house, the cars, Desmond's retirement accounts, even his collection of vintage guitars. Massachusetts courts don't look kindly on adultery, combined with financial fraud. Beautiful morning, she said, joining me at the end of the dock. Perfect for new beginnings, I agreed. How's the house hunting going? I found a place in Vermont. Small town, mountain views, far from all this drama. She smiled. I'm thinking of opening a bookstore. Something quiet and peaceful. You'll be great at that. You always were the smart one in your marriage. We stood in comfortable silence, watching early morning joggers stretch on the beach. The charity run would start in 30 minutes, giving us plenty of witnesses for what was about to unfold. At exactly 6:15, Desmond's battered Honda pulled into the marina parking lot, followed by Beatrice's Range Rover. They'd received identical messages yesterday. Final settlement meeting. Lakeside Marina, 6:30 a.m. Come alone or lose everything. They approached the dock cautiously, clearly expecting some kind of trap. Desmond looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past month. His designer clothes had been replaced by discount store basics, and his usually perfect hair was unkempt. Beatrice was trying to maintain her appearance, but I could see the cracks, the fake designer handbag, the shoes that needed repair, the desperation in her eyes. "What do you want, Quincy?" Desmond called out as they reached the dock. "Just to talk, clear the air. Maybe work out some kind of arrangement." I gestured to the bench at the end of the dock. "Have a seat. Enjoy the sunrise." They sat reluctantly, clearly suspicious of my motives. Good. They should be. "I've been thinking about our situation," I began, pacing slowly along the dock. 3 lives destroyed, 15 years of friendship ruined. All for what? A few months of sneaking around like teenagers? "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," Beatrice said quietly. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone." "But you did hurt people. You hurt me, you hurt Nora, you hurt yourselves." I stopped pacing and looked directly at them. "The question is, what do we do about it now?" Desmond leaned forward eagerly. "We can fix this, Quincy. I'll pay back every penny I took, work for free if I have to." "With what job?" I interrupted. "You're unemployable in this industry. I made sure of that." His face fell. It was true. I'd called every major developer in the region, shared the story of his fraud and betrayal. No one would hire him, not even for entry-level positions. "But I'm not completely heartless," I continued. "I have a proposition." Both of them looked up hopefully, like drowning people spotting a life preserver. "I'm willing to help you both get back on your feet. Find Desmond a job in another state, maybe Florida or Texas, where my reputation doesn't reach. Give Beatrice enough money to start over somewhere new." "What's the catch?" Beatrice asked suspiciously. "No catch, just one small requirement." I smiled, and something in my expression made them both nervous. "I want you to admit what you did. Publicly. Right here, right now, in front of all these witnesses." I gestured to the growing crowd of joggers, dog walkers, and marina staff who were pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Admit that you stole from me, lied to me, betrayed 15 years of friendship and 12 years of marriage for a cheap thrill. Admit that you're both selfish, dishonest people who destroyed everything good in your lives for momentary pleasure. Desmond's face went red. You want us to humiliate ourselves for your entertainment? I want you to tell the truth. For once in your lives, just tell the truth. The crowd was getting larger. Someone had started live streaming on social media. This was going to be seen by thousands of people, shared and reshared, until it became local legend. This is insane, Beatrice stood up. I'm not doing this. Then you get nothing. No help, no money, no second chances. You can figure out your new life on your own. She sat back down, the fight going out of her. They were both broke, unemployable, and desperate. I was offering them a lifeline, but the price was their pride. Fine, Desmond said finally. What do you want us to say? The truth. All of it. For the next 10 minutes, I watched my former best friend and ex-wife confess their sins to a growing crowd of neighbors and strangers. They admitted to the affair, the theft, the months of lies and deception. Desmond broke down crying when he described using company money to buy Beatrice jewelry. Beatrice's voice cracked when she admitted that she'd never loved me, had only married me for financial security. The crowd was silent, transfixed by the spectacle of two people destroying themselves with honesty. When they finished, I nodded approvingly. Thank you. That must have been difficult. Now what? Beatrice asked. You said you'd help us. I reached into my jacket and pulled out 2 envelopes. Here's your help. Bus tickets to different cities, $500 each, and a list of homeless shelters in case you can't find work immediately. Bus tickets? Desmond stared at the envelope in shock. You said you'd help us start over. I am helping you. I'm giving you exactly what you deserve. A chance to rebuild your lives from nothing, just like I did 20 years ago. I stepped closer to them. The difference is, I built my success through hard work and honesty. You destroyed yours through laziness and lies. Beatrice lunged at me, her manicured nails aimed at my face. You bastard! You destroyed everything. I sidestepped easily, and she stumbled past me toward the edge of the dock. For a moment she teetered on the brink, arms windmilling for balance. Then she fell backward into the lake with a spectacular splash. The crowd gasped, then burst into laughter and applause. Someone shouted, 10 points for style! Another person started a slow clap. Beatrice surfaced, sputtering and furious, her designer dress clinging to her body, her perfect hair plastered to her skull. She looked like a drowned rat, and the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Desmond started toward me, fists raised, but stopped when he saw Nora's private investigator step out of the crowd. The man was built like a linebacker and had been documenting everything with a professional camera. I wouldn't, the investigator said calmly. Assault charges won't help your situation. Desmond deflated, all the fight going out of him. He was beaten, and he knew it. I looked down at Beatrice, who was treading water and cursing creatively. You wanted freedom, Bea. Welcome to it. Hope you packed your floaties. The crowd was taking pictures, recording videos, creating content that would live forever on social media. By noon, Lake Revenage would be trending locally. By evening, the story would be shared across the region. I turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for witnessing this morning's entertainment. Remember, actions have consequences, and the truth always comes out in the end. As Beatrice climbed out of the lake, dripping and humiliated, and Desmond stood frozen in defeat, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not just revenge, justice. They'd gotten exactly what they deserved, no more and no less. Nora joined me as we watched them slink away toward their cars, soaked and broken, and finally understanding the true cost of their betrayal. Feel better? she asked. Much better. I looked out at the sunrise, painting the lake in brilliant colors. You know what the best part is? I'm not angry anymore. For the first time in months, I feel free. The sun finally rose, and for once, it was just for me. Sunrise settlement, paid in full,